Buying a car in Carvana was so easy. I was able to finance it through them.
Whoa, wait, you mean finance?
Yeah, finance. Got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan, entered my terms, and shot from thousands of great car options all within my budget.
That's cool, but financing through Carvana was so easy.
Financed. Done. And I get to pick up my car from their Carvana vending machine tomorrow.
Financed.
Right, that's what I said.
You can spend time trying to pronounce financing, or you can actually finance and buy your car today on
Carvana.
Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Thanks for selling your car to Carvana. Here's your check.
Whoa, when did I get here?
What do you mean?
I swear it was just moments ago that I accepted a great offer from Carvana online. I must have time traveled to the future.
It was just moments ago. We do same-day pickup. Here's your check for that great offer.
It is the future.
It's the present and just the convenience of Carvana. Sorry to blow your mind.
It's all good. Happens all the time.
Sell your car the convenient way to
Carvana.
Pickup times may vary and fees may apply.
Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
So everybody, welcome to this episode of the Deep Blue Project. This is actually take 2. We're going to try to do this again. It's funny. I'm going to give a little background. Today, my guest is Doug Shoemaker. Doug and I have known each other a little while here, a few years now. Tied into ICP and a couple other projects. But Doug and I tried to do this a couple days ago, and he was actually somewhere else, and I was at home, and he was at home, and we had some technical difficulties. But what was so funny is we knew we were both coming out here to Surly today. So we just said, you know what? We'll just hang off and we'll do this live and in person.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to let Doug say a little bit about himself. Like I said, Doug was with ICP. He's a former chief of police. So he has a lot of that background. And he also talks in this space that I'm always speaking of as wellness. And that's why we're here. And we're also going to discuss a little bit about a little project that's out there called The Curve. Doug, if you want to...
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be back on and actually know that we won't have the technical difficulties, knock on wood, that we had the other day. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you do in the space. But yeah, it's exciting to be here. Doug Shoemaker, and retired out of policing after 33 years on the job. Did most years in state capital Missouri, Jeff City. And then took 2 different chief's jobs in 2 different states, one in Grand Junction, Colorado, and one in Denton, Texas. And during that time, got really involved with the ICP. I've been a member for almost 20 years of the ICP, but took it to another level and decided to run for election and got elected 5th vice president. Went up to 3rd before I retired out and joined the private sector. But I will tell you, throughout my career, I'm so thankful for all the people that I had along the way to really kind of show me the things I was doing really well and the things I was doing really, really poorly to help me along on that journey, because policing is not an easy career. And we've talked about that some in terms of especially how it's changed over the last several years, but also the last decades that, we've been involved with it. Yeah. So it's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is you touch on something good, and that I like. We don't kind of script this stuff, so it's like as we say something, something pops in our head, and we're like, "Oh, squirrel!" So we start talking about that. So,
yes, for sure.
But that's one of the things I think is great, because one of the big things that I try to do is it's not all sugar coated, right? Like we can't keep talking about all the good things. Policing is wonderful. We've both have done this for years and years, but sometimes there's a poor side of it that we have to deal with, and without getting into the weeds, we just got to remember that there's ways out of it. There's ways to deal with it, and sometimes you just got to kind of take what comes.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we've both have experienced that in our space. But I think that leads off to a wellness type of thing, because it can affect you. I mean, we're human beings.
Right.
Nobody hates to lose a job. Like we all think we're the best at what we do, but you got to prepare for that.
And when you walk into a chief's role in particular, the moment you take that role, the moment you better be ready to walk away. Especially if it's something that goes against your morals, your ethics. And so, there's really no parachute most of the time for people that step into that role. And it's tough because, you and I both know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, especially in the wellness space, that, identity becomes such a part of who you are. And it's a unique profession because we get so wrapped up in the badge and the identity of being a police officer and all the things that go with it. And it's unlike most other professions anywhere. And it becomes like this intrinsic part of who you are. And when you step away, you make that choice to step away from the role to do something different or step in the private sector, whatever it happens to be. You sort of step away from the mission. And that can be challenging for people because you don't have that camaraderie. You don't have that sense of purpose of I'm going to go out and help people in this direct way that you've become so accustomed to. So that transition can be really, really tricky for people. And navigating that it's a whole new world. It really, truly is.
I'd like to expand on that because I think that's something that's important because we get so tied into what we do for many, many years of our career. Like, it's like you get into that, we get up, we put on our uniform, we kiss our loved ones goodbye, we go do the job, wash, rinse, repeat. I mean, when that stops, and you don't, and I'm not saying it, sometimes it may be forced, sometimes it may not be, but either way, leaving that sense of responsibility, leaving that sense of being a guardian of people. I don't care if you've done it for 30, like people laugh at me because you always say this, you haven't done it for 30 minutes or 30 years, because it's the truth.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter how long you've done it. If you're done it, then it's a part of you. It's a part of you. So how has that kind of transition been?
Yeah, I think it's been admittedly challenging. You miss the camaraderie, you miss the people. You don't miss a lot of things about it. There are certain things that we would all say that we don't miss about policing, especially the higher you go in an organization or as a chief. And there's certain things that you may not miss as much. Some of the political type pressures or those types of issues that you just deal with, which is part of the job. And you know that when you take it, otherwise don't take it. Mm-hmm. But I think going back to when I started, I grew up as a young cop, and if my sergeant called me to come in and say, hey, can you come in early, 2 hours early to cover? Before he would hang up the phone, I would be on my way in to go and cover because I was so in love with this job. Can I stay late? This kind of attitude. And everything was about the job. And my friends were all cops and all the things. And soon I learned that, I still needed to stay in touch with people that I was close with that weren't police officers because I had a life outside of that role. So I think as you navigate that change down through the road, to answer your specific question, I think while it was difficult for me to transition out and absolutely miss the mission, miss all those types of things, it was easier in some ways because I knew I had so many good friends and a family of support that I could still be me. I could still be Doug and not just the chief or the cop kind of thing. So I still had a sense of identity. But admittedly, there were days where that was an extremely tough transition, and I battled with that. I mean, it's hard to walk away from that badge. It's funny. I liken it to, when you leave and you take off the badge, you take off the gun belt, the vest for the last time, you literally are leaving a part of you behind because you've wrapped yourself up. You would have given your life up potentially. And that you don't say that about a lot of jobs. Right. And so that weight, that seriousness, that commitment to doing so much for so long, there's going to be ramifications from that. So when you step away in that way, part of you dies with it in some way. So you have to have things. And I don't mean when you retire, I have a job lined up, XYZ. That's not what I'm talking about. There's life after it. You have to make sure that you have all these other parts of your life that are in place to still go out and live that life in a way that's still meaningful and you're giving back to whatever it is that you're most passionate about. It could be, I always wanted to be a chef or something, or I wanted to go back to college, or I wanted to, woodworking. It doesn't matter consulting. It's a billion things you can do. But having that passion and making sure that you find within yourself that drive to continue on when you're not doing that one thing anymore can be really critical.
Right. No, I think that's 100% of a thought, because that's one thing that I think about now, being on that kind of, but we're always a day away. Quite honestly, you never know what's going to happen. Sure. But when you have a plan, or you try to have a plan and say, I'm this many years out, because that's kind of where I am now. I know that time is coming. And you're like, this is where I'd like to be, but you're never really sure what that's going to entail. You touched on something earlier that I think we try to talk more about, and that comes up, is the family aspect. And one of the issues that I think that we're trying to do now, because it was lost on us, right? We were so, as to your point, we were so in tune with the job. We'd get that phone call from someone, and we'd be on the road before it's like as soon as it rang and you saw where the number was coming from, you were pretty much in your car before they even asked.
Here we go.
But then you got a lot of times we did a lot of things and I guess the easiest way to put it is in spite of our family. Like we did that jump and went, well, that's the job. Sorry, got to go.
Yeah.
And that is not something that is we find out later.
Right.
We've given up a whole lot for this job, but we really didn't need to.
No. Yeah, it's an interesting point because we love it so much and we work so hard at it while we're doing it. But the reality is this: we have to figure out a way to make sure that we tell folks that are joining policing or they want to become an executive, they want to become a chief, whatever it happens to be, that the day that you decide to walk away from everything, the day that you decide to call it quits and move on to something different, you will have a legacy of work behind you that is set by you. You determine what that is. And my dad always raised me that you go and you work hard and you give it your all, and that's what you do because it's the right thing to do. But when you leave, and you will at some point, the agency is going to move on without you.
Right.
And that's sometimes people are like, whoa, wait a minute. You mean the world does not revolve around me at this organization, especially if you're a chief. It's like, but I've led this organization. I've done all these things. And first of all, you've never done it alone anyway. It's always been a team effort. And I think most people understand that and get it. But it's a hard reality when you step away that like you're literally locked out in most cases.
Exactly.
And so that's difficult for people to really get their minds around that life is going to go on without you. This agency existed before you were here. It'll exist after you're gone. And as you navigate that, you have to have a sense, you still have to have a sense of purpose. So don't put all those eggs in that basket to think that this is my life, because at some point you are going to go. And we all know people that have stayed too long, well-meaning, amazing people that just want to commit themselves. But at some point you have to go and you have to have something afterwards, because you and I have probably, and many of the folks that tune in have known people that after they get done with their career, they die, they go away. And it's this sad, horrible reality of the job was literally their life. And I'm sure this sounds very depressing and dark, but that's the reality of it. And in so many ways that people, they live for the job and only for the job, and that's all they have. And once the job is gone, then that's a big challenge. So we have to prepare in advance. We have to better arm our cops, our women and men that are out there doing all the great things, to have that identity outside of policing. Give it 110%. Be the best possible police professional you can be. But have other things that drive you, that motivate you, that still let you keep that persona. So afterwards, when you're finished, you carry on and do that other thing. Perfectly all right. I actually kind of recommend it. It's healthier that way. So if you have that, you'll be a better cop in the first place.
Going on with that theme, I think some of the other things that we talk about, not just that point of family and being engaged and we start to lose ourselves. I mean, I can look back and some of the things that we talk about and I talk about now and some of the people out there that I really respect, that a lot of this was driven from we lose ourselves. We start to pull away from everything that means anything because the job becomes so intrinsic into what we're doing, but we also then think we're protecting people. So we start pulling away. We stop discussing the things that are going on our daily lives. We stop, interacting with our children. Our pool of friends starts to dwindle. It goes from people outside of law enforcement to only law enforcement. But then, and people are going to look at you're full of shit. And I'm going to go, no. Then even you draw away from work people too. Like, then you have just you. Right. You find yourself is just, you're coming to work, you're going home, and you're being this solitude of a person. And that's where the things start to fall apart. That's where I found that start to fall apart.
And it's easier and because you're excited to get on the job. You're thrilled to do all the things. I do think our newest generation of cops have a little different mindset because they want to have that identity outside. They have their friends, they have things they're passionate about. And I think it's reprioritizing life, which I think COVID did that to us, quite frankly, which is not always a bad thing at all, actually. But I do think when you eat, sleep, live, breathe, everything policing, you go to work, and I'm going to date myself here, but then after work, you'd go to choir practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then who are you hanging out with? Cops. What are you talking about? Everything that happened that day. So you're literally living a cycle of just the job on and off duty that just rinse, repeat. And so you alienate yourself, whether you intend to or not, away from the realities beyond just the world of policing. And it just doesn't typically end well in a lot of cases. You've got to have those outside things. Again, it has nothing to do with being less passionate for the job at all. I gave it my all when I was on duty, and I'm proud of that. Never had to once, do anything that was ethically or morally wrong in my career, and I stood by that stuff. And that wasn't always the popular thing in a lot of cases, But it is what it is, and I can walk away with my head held high and say, yeah, I did it the right way, and I feel pretty good about that. Made some mistakes, no doubt, along the way, right?
Yeah.
We all do. But, walking away and having that head held high is, there's so much to be said about that, and then feeling comfortable enough. And it's been a year and a half almost later for me since I've been out. Still think about it because you still want to go and you want to help, you want to mentor, you want to be a part of that, helping the next generation. You want to see people, you want to leave it better than you got it. So there's still that, man, I think about that kind of thing. And you think about it constantly, and that's human and that's normal. But there's also a life outside of it that's just as normal and probably a little more healthy in a lot of ways. Right. So we just have to balance that out, right?
Well, we say all that to say this. You never obviously really get truly full away once you've done this, because part of it is still ingrained in you. Because obviously, even though you've been out a year and a half, here we are together at a police function. Yeah. You're here with another company, but still, that's kind of some of the things, as you said, that we do when we get out of a job. We either go consulting or we're dealing with. Sure. But it's not just that. You still are a part of the ICP, and you're still doing things with them in that capacity, even though you had to leave. For some of you people out there, let me just kind of say what goes on. A lot of times in these organizations, and I'm the same way with FBI LEDA and all. Like, what if you leave as a chief executive? They give you some time to either decide whether you want to go back in or be a chief somewhere. Sure. And if you're not within a certain amount of time, you have to drop out. Yeah. And we hate that, because we poured so much into it. But it's a case. But for Doug, I mean, he was still able, and he still is part of the ICP. Yeah. And still is doing some good things with ICP. So I want you to kind of touch on your role now with ICP and how that's kind of helped keep that transition.
I think that's been helpful. And even though I no longer serve in like an elected position, because I can't, because I'm not an active chief, I'm still able to help on a committee. I co-chair a committee on human and civil rights, and I'm also getting involved in something else that'll be mentioned coming up at the October conference that I can't talk about yet, but it's part of ICP, and I feel like it's part of helping with the mission still. So I feel I'm just as passionate about it, but it's a different way because I want to give back. Because I will always love to tell the stories of the great work that the women and men do out there. I will always be a very pro-police, pro-professional policing type of person. That's just who I am, and I'll always support the women and men in blue. But I'm just doing it in a different way. So having that work with ICP, I'm also an ambassador for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. And so I get to start working on some of the challenges with wellness and suicide prevention, those kinds of things. And that's something I'm very ingrained in, wanting to make sure that we get that out there more, because I think wellness is the thing. And finally, we're talking about it in a way that's productive and not just a catchphrase or a little program that we implement. So that's exciting. I get to do that. The company I work for now, has been very supportive of those things. So I'm very, very thankful. Big supporters of policing in the space, and then the work with the Curve and the work with Simon Sinek and the group of amazing chiefs that I've been able to work with, Chris Shung being one of those. That's a mentor and a friend, and for several years we were PIOs, different agencies, but that's how we kind of grew up together. So we had a lot of things to share, and then we've grown that friendship, and that relationship has grown so much now to this work with Simon, which has been really to look at leadership within policing and change that cultural aspect within organizations that we think is that missing link to really take us to the next level.
That's a great, you segued right into where I was going to go.
I've done this once or twice. This is fun.
You just leave.
There's not even cue cards anywhere.
There's nobody over here standing going, smile, clap.
I know, right? Yeah.
But you segue into something great, because we've had this conversation, and I've actually, I'm going to have the opportunity to speak to Chris here in a couple of weeks, which I'm looking forward to.
It's a great guest.
As I told you, and I don't leave anything out, one of the things is I've started looking into Curve. I've listened to a lot of things. Obviously, everybody knows Simon Sinek. Sure. His stuff is out there. His books, his TED Talks, his is very an inspirational person. And I'd like to know kind of how that kind of marriage came together, because you wouldn't. I mean, we're cops. We're cynical right off the bat.
Right.
So you're like, we know them. We have the group that reads the books and kind of says, they buy into. Yep. What certain people are saying. It doesn't matter whether it's Simon Sinek, doesn't matter if it's, Kevin Gilmartin, doesn't matter who it is. They kind of latch to somebody. But how did that kind of get together?
It's a funny, and you mentioned, we're cynics, and it's funny because Simon runs, his company is called the Optimism Company, which is the obviously opposite of the cynical company. Right. Somebody wants the cynical company. But it actually happened right after George Floyd. And there were a group of chiefs that came together to get on this Zoom call with Simon, because Simon's always been very passionate about policing, professional ethical policing. He's done a lot of work with the military and all the things. And he wanted to talk to some police professionals across the country to say, let's talk about the future of policing. I mean, obviously this has been a big, whether it's Ferguson, Rodney King, but George Floyd really changed, plus COVID on top of that. I mean, it was not a fun time to be a police chief.
No, that was tough.
I did not enjoy that year at all, actually.
I don't think any of us did.
Nobody did. And we were all struggling to find ways to build our craft and to be better and to still lead and do great things for a profession we believed in so much. So when we got together with Simon and we met, we had a few Zoom meetings and conversations, and we decided to all get together that year in Colorado and sat down. And the funny thing is as it started, it began with this: how do we solve, what problems are we trying to solve with policing? But it turned into Simon asking a simple question for all of us, and he said, how are you all doing right now? And there's all these chiefs, people that I have just huge respect for, Chris, all these other really amazing individuals that I hold in a very high standard. And, it's this awkward sort of, we're fine, kind of okay, the standard response. And then somebody opens up and says, you know what, not good. And I'm struggling with these things. And soon, it's like one after the next of us starts talking. And it's this feeling of, okay, I've sort of found my people because I'm not the only one going through this. And Simon, being the brilliant guy that he is, brings it all out of us to say, okay, let's talk through this and see what that looks like. And maybe through this shared experience that's just not so great in policing right now with everything, maybe we can create something better. And let's talk about what that focus is. So over the course of those meetings that continue to happen, the meetings in Colorado every year, we decided to say, okay, we think that maybe the challenge is in police leadership. And that's where a lot of the culture is born and what's taking place right now. So there were, I think, 5 of us plus Simon that formed a 501c3. It's an actual nonprofit called The Curve. If you go to thecurve.org, you can see it. And I'm one of the founding board members, proud to be along that with Chris and, of course, Simon and some others that are great thought leaders in the space. And really to try and address this issue of what's the real challenge in police agencies. And a lot of it is the culture. So not looking at traditional policing leadership books, which are great in their own right, but they look at it from a police mindset. But taking Simon's works, whether it's The Infinite Game or Leaders Eat Last or Start With Why or whatever book you want to talk about, but also not just Simon's work, but other people's works that are just as impactful, that aren't traditional police texts. But if you read through them, you're like, it's exactly like the things that we're dealing with within this organization. And typically police agencies are so far behind businesses in terms of being progressive and thoughtful and how we address issues because we're just police agencies and government is slow, right? Sometimes. So we started doing these different things and recently had a conference at UCLA campus. I was lucky enough to get to speak and talk about some of the issues of trauma within policing, which was amazing to stand in front of your mentor, Simon Sinek, and speak and talk about these kinds of things and all these amazing thought leaders out in the audience. But as we start to build, we're going to start addressing those types of things through different courses and different ways to have us think differently about how we approach these types of issues. Because policing is absolutely a noble profession, but there's just some things that we need to tweak and fix and address head on and say, how do we really truly address culture within organizations? How do we mentor people to be better? How do we enable people to be at their very best, and what motivates them to do that? Because I don't think we ask that a lot of times. It's just the standard, well, you do this, you do X, Y, Z, and it's this linear path, when many times the path takes several different ways based on the person. So getting to know the people that work for us, the privilege of leadership in and of itself is a heavy weight for a reason. Right. And with that comes a lot of work. So that's what we're trying to do to address that very thing. So that evolution has been slow, methodical, I think thoughtful on a lot of different levels, and using Simon and his generosity for what we're doing in the first place to really host this and drive this, whether it's the podcast, whether it's whatever we happen to do. We have a LinkedIn channel, all the different things that we're building content for, just to get the message out and just to have those hard conversations about, let's talk about culture, because police agencies are paramilitary and all the kind of things. Well, okay, why is it that way? And how is that really helpful to people? Because when you and I started our job, totally different culture type things. You don't talk about trauma, right?
Definitely.
You go to a fatality and you come back and you're like working through this to say, boy, maybe you just had a kid and there's a, God forbid, the terrible thing happened, there's a kid involved. Yeah. You don't talk about it. You go get a call stacked. Go to the next call. What are you doing? Get out there.
Yeah, suck it up. Yeah.
Suck it up, Buttercup. You said it earlier. Yeah.
Things we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, literally talking about earlier.
The first thing out of their mouth when you sat down or you dealt with it, and this ain't just cops. It's first responders all across the board. Let's put it that way. Firefighters, paramedics.
Sure.
when you start the job, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we came on. And the thing is again, it's my thing of 30 minutes or whatever it is. We just had a graduating class come out, and I just got a new officer, and I had the opportunity to speak to the class. And one of the thing about that was I had said to them, like, everybody says that the fluffy stuff, oh, it's great. And I'm sorry, I had to be the poo-poo guy.
You're the guy.
We are happy to have you here, and you've chosen a great profession.
Right.
But here's the thing. When you start work Monday night, depending on where you are in this world, depending on that crapshoot of calls, that first 5 minutes, there's a good chance you're going to see the most horrific thing you've probably ever seen in your life. And we don't ever want them people doing what they did to us anymore. When you went to that first call, and it could be, it could be a shooting, it could be somebody. And nowadays, I'm sorry, that's like norm. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
The guys got shot 15 times, laying in the middle of the road in a pool of blood, and you're looking at it, and this person might have just seen that the first time, and they go back and sit in the car, and they got this look on their face like they don't know what to do. And then that mentor, that FTO, is sitting next to them going, "Suck it up, dude. You're going to see more of that shit."
Yep.
And you're like, we got to stop that.
You're not in the academy anymore. Here's the real thing.
Yeah, we got to stop that.
Yeah, it's not healthy.
Because it's going to be traumatic.
Right. We got to address it head on. And I think we're getting better about it. We're being more open about it now. And I think people demand it more as we look at it now. And I had a conversation with a bunch of chiefs to talk about, the new generation of people coming in. And there's a few that were like, I don't like it. They ask questions and they want to know why. And I flip it around and say, you know what? I actually like the fact that they're asking why, because it means they're invested and they want to know. And we should never, as leaders, shy away from the why. Explain it. And then it's funny because more often than not, somebody would question, well, why do we need to do it this way? Or why have we always done it this way? Whatever else. And sometimes it's those questions you're like, wait a minute, why have we always done it?
Exactly. Why are we doing that?
Right. Why are we doing this as well? And so what I do is say, okay, well, you bring me a problem. My rule was always, if you walk in my office and bring me a problem, bring me a solution that you've thought through to fix it. Right. And tell me what that is. And I will absolutely sit and listen. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Why have we not done that? Let's look into this and do it. And the feeling of pride from the person going, okay, cool. Not only am I heard and I'm listened to, but my thoughts are valuable. You're winning. That is winning in an organization. And I don't care if it's from, I'm the chief and it's the line cop. Guess what? The line cops know really what we're doing in the first place out there. And they're literally the ones, or the dispatchers that are seeing something, or the folks that are on the front lines. Listen to what they're doing and listen to their feedback, because that's what everybody's probably experiencing. And I'm sitting in my office doing emails most of the time, let's be honest, or going to meetings, whatever else, because I'm out there doing the practical work. You can get some really good ideas, but you have to be willing to listen, and you have to be willing to challenge them to think, how would you solve this problem? Because you're setting them up for that mentorship, that future leadership. And that's the best type of training, as they prepare for that sergeant role, that corporal role, that lieutenant role, whatever it happens to be, that future chief role. Right. And there were people I would see in my organization, and I could go back and point them out and go, that person someday would be an outstanding chief, because he or she is not afraid to question this, and they're willing to take risks to accomplish something, and they're willing to bring people along with them. And then those natural leaders, or not even formal leaders, informal leaders, but you see that potential. And that's the beautiful moments of this career that are harder to walk away from, because you don't get to have a hand in that as much anymore. And so that's the difficult piece. I think that's by far the hardest part of walking away from policing, is not having a hand in helping others be better than what you were in the job, and seeing that pride and that accomplishment. And when you get that text one day, and it's happened, and they're like the best texts ever, of like, hey, I really appreciate the time that you were here, because you made a difference, and here's how you did that. It's like, oh, this is, when I'm having a terrible day, I'm going to screenshot this and save it. I'm going to go, okay, that's the reason why. That was worth it. That's the culture, and that's the worth it piece, because we love our folks, and we've got to treat them better, and we've got to make sure that they get to their goals someday too. Right.
Well, so for some of the people who may listen to this who have known me in my earlier years, don't be calling me and crying bullshit and saying I was that guy, because I'm not going to sit here and say at one point in my lifetime, in my leadership journey, I was not that guy, because I was, because that's the way I was brought up.
Right.
I mean, my leadership skills, my first time around when I got up to lieutenant in my past agency, I was horrible. I was horrible because that's how I thought leadership was, because that's all it was for me. Like when you were dealing with a tough situation, it was like, it was like military. It's like being a drill sergeant. I was like, no, just do it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I know now, learning from that, that wasn't the way to be. So don't be calling me or don't be texting me or don't be putting little notes on this saying, you're full of shit. You used to be. No, I know.
It's probably already in your comments. As soon as this goes out, it's going to be in your comments.
I'm like, I already know that early in my leadership and journey and before I took the time to become educated on how to respectfully deal with people and still be able to get the job done, that I was that guy.
Yeah.
But that's the learning process.
Yeah.
And I don't and I have a good friend of mine, Ernie Stevens, who I talk to all the time, and a lot of you know Ernie, and Ernie was a San Antonio cop, and he did a lot of things. But Ernie's one of them guys that are a friend of mine that kind of keeps me grounded and always goes, you know what, you got to learn to give yourself grace and stop beating yourself up over that. And it's taken me a while to do that, but I do now. Going, you know what, that was me, but that's not me now.
Yeah,
so I can't
acknowledge that.
You can't keep treating yourself as with the mistakes you've made.
Yeah. If you do that, you live a life of regret.
Right.
And there's so many things that you impacted people with, and so many things, and we can all look back on our careers and go, oh, I wasn't the best during this time, or I wish I would have done this differently. But that's being human.
Right.
And as long as you understand it and say that, it probably wasn't the behavior I meant to exhibit, or probably wasn't the way I wanted to go on something. I bet there's also another instance where you did something really, really well. But sometimes we just beat ourselves up over the negative stuff. It's just like today's society. We focus so much on the negative as opposed to, but I'm actually pretty good at some things, and I did some good things, and I think I helped some people along the way. And those are the things we have to keep centered and grounded with.
So we got a little bit off the curb, but I want to go back to it because I want to go back to that discussion just because I'm a big believer in if information is good, information is great. And we have people that are speaking about not only I think it's more now that a lot of that has to be, and you and I had a short conversation about this before we got on also, is the reality.
Right.
Let's start talking about what reality is. I know because there's some about this job that is awful.
Absolutely.
And you can't escape it.
Right.
I mean, and sometimes that we have to give people all of the information.
Right.
And I think with the group, as you mentioned, coming in now, I call them kids because I'm much older now.
Yeah.
The kids coming in now, they're more knowledgeable.
Oh yeah.
The internet, social media, all this stuff, good and very bad.
Right.
But they're more knowledgeable and they are questioning things. And some of the things that we got to understand, some of the things we have done in the past are a little archaic.
Right.
If we have some of us who have been around a long time, we're kind of stuck in our values. There's still some things that I'm kind of stuck in that old way. But them wanting to know, I think things with like the curve and what some of us are trying, and what I'm trying to do here is like, let's give you a bit of the reality also, because if we're going to teach leadership, if we're going to teach wellness, we have to be able to tell the whole story.
Right. And I think it's interesting because Simon introduced me and several of the board and some others. He was actually on one of the Curve podcasts to talk about his book, and his name is Will Gadara, and he wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, which has literally nothing to do with policing. As a matter of fact, Will's a restaurateur from New York City, and you're like, okay, where is this going with policing? Like, there's nothing to do with it whatsoever. What it does have to do with is the fact that it all boils down to how we treat people and that customer service piece. And so we talk about reality. And let's be honest, we all know, and we've all been on those traffic stops where you walk up and the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up. You're like, something's not right. You get that sixth sense that something could go horribly wrong. And unfortunately, we've seen it too many times where it's exactly has happened. So taking this unreasonable hospitality does not at all mean that as police officers, we should walk up calm and, not suspecting anything and just try and do our very best so they don't leave a negative review on our social media accounts, whatever it happens to be. That's not what we're talking about. But in a lot of cases, how we treat people can be directly related to how they respond to us and how they feel about us. Because, okay, look, I would estimate in Denton, last place that I worked, at least 40% of all of our calls had nothing to do with law enforcement. They were quality of life issues in the community where nobody knew who to call, so they called the police. And when our officers responded, they weren't going to take any enforcement action because there was no laws being violated. So we don't just arbitrarily enforce the law like we're some sort of occupying force.
Right.
We try and find a solution to whatever problem we're dealing with. And our officers, to their credit, had to be extremely nimble and be able to read Here's what the problem is. Here's what I can do about it. Here's the services. And in that moment, in those moments, they had to do that customer service. Call it what you will, but it's customer service. So you take this non-traditional policing thought of customer service and you bring it in through a book that has nothing to do with policing, but yet it has everything to do with policing. Flip that, though, with the time where you're walking up on that car and your hair's standing up on the back of your neck. And then all of a sudden you're like, this could go really, really horribly wrong. And in fact, it does go horribly wrong. That's not time for unreasonable hospitality. It's not what that is for, because policing is by its very nature sometimes ugly. It is. We have to put our hands on people. You get into fights. That is just the world, because we deal with continuously worse and worse people that do not care about the authority. They won't say, I'm going to stop. They'll continue to brandish a knife. They'll do the awful thing. Sometimes they'll force us to make a decision that could take a life. That is the reality of policing. And people have to understand that's part of what we do. And we can't sugarcoat it because it's ugly, but it is the reality of things. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to get yourself or somebody else hurt on this job, and potentially the public, and on top of everything. So we have to somehow find that marriage of, look, we want to be the best public stewards of the trust of the community, because we get our power from them in the first place. With that comes the responsibility and the knowledge that they want us to make sure that we keep them safe. And in that work to keep them safe, it requires us to sometimes use force to effect an arrest and take a really bad person off the street. And it gets ugly.
Yeah.
Yes, and I know the body cam footage could look ugly. Yeah, fights aren't fun.
Yeah, they're not easy.
They're not fun. And you go for a minute fighting somebody that might be high on something, whatever else, and it is in no way, shape, or form a pretty moment, but it is sometimes a moment of survival. Yeah. And if there's nobody else to stand between that criminal element and that evil than us, then we're in trouble as a society. So sometimes we have to do those things that force us to do that. The moment that person stops resisting, though, we're done. Yeah. We're done. We're not doing an extra thing. Mm-hmm. They're done. That's it. We've got them to be under control, whatever else, and we're finished with it. So I'm a big believer in that. We are always professional all the time. But if we need to use force, then we do it the ethical, right way, according to policy, the way we're trained, and we do it. Right. Because you have to at any time. When we're not doing that, then we are good stewards. We're in public relations with trying to help people find solutions to problems, because nobody else wants to help them. Yep. And here we are.
Well, we're the end. We're always the last point of contact, for some people, we're the first
and sometimes last time.
We're like the only point of contact, because they know you're going to show up. Sometimes that's a good thing. Yeah. Sometimes that's a bad thing.
It's funny though, because I've known, and I worked with so many cops, and there was a cop that I worked with. He's since passed away, but there's two guys. They were partners, and they were part of a community policing team, which back in the day, that was a thing, like a team, mm-hmm. as opposed to a department-wide philosophy type of thing. And these guys would go out, and their arrest stats and all the stats, the numbers were super low. But they had built such a trust within the areas of the community they'd served that people wouldn't talk to other officers, but they would talk to them because they believed in them and they trusted them. Mm-hmm. And when the bad thing would happen, like if there was a robbery or drug deals rose in an area, or a homicide or something, the community members that they trusted would go to them and give them that information, try and help them, because they'd built that trust and rapport. That is good stewardship and being good cops. It had nothing to do with the number of arrests or DWIs, or those things are important. I get it. But at the end of the day, these cops got it. And they really had the trust of their community, of people that, quite frankly, would not normally trust anybody else, but they trusted them because they kept to their word. They were honorable. They were just great cops.
I mean, I think the problem that we have to that point is that, unfortunately, we see all the bad issues. We don't publicize that, because we all know the people. Like when I talk about Ernie all the time, and what Ernie and his partner did with dealing with people in crisis in San Antonio, it was amazing. Like you can go watch their show Crisis Cops that they put out, and see all the effort that they put in to be able to actually provide services to these people, so they didn't have those. Not to say it was always perfect, and he would tell you that himself. And I know, or I wouldn't speak for Ernie, but he'd be like, "Yeah, you're right on, brother. You got it." I said, but he would. I learned that from my relationship with him and watching that show and having conversations with him, that there is the right way to do it. So if we really want to, and there's hundreds and thousands of people doing this job that are doing that. The hard part is, I think most of us, we're so bad at promoting the good things, and the media is so good at putting out the bad things that it gets overwhelming, but you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't go unsaid that the silent majority, the people that aren't spending all their day on Twitter and
Right.
watching everything and reading everything or making
Right.
comments about what everything that's on, they support everything that their local departments are doing. They have confidence in their departments. When you're bringing people on and we're doing things like this and doing things, it's just be honest with the way the job is. Because this is the job.
Yeah. And you know what? Celebrate it. And you mentioned it just a minute ago. We need to celebrate the wins more. And there was nothing better than walking into a briefing and knowing that, 2 nights before the night shift, B shift had done something, walking into to briefing when they all come back and saying, I know you guys see a lot of stuff and all the things, but you guys did a bang up job with this series of Carbergs in an area. I mean, you guys had a ring of people doing some stuff and you managed to knock that down, and you did the teamwork. The reports are great. All the stuff kind of made a difference here. This is just solid work. Like, keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, people notice.
Well, yeah.
That's kind of cool, and that's the fun stuff. And I think that's the thing that motivates people. Sometimes we take people for granted and we just say, well, that's my job. And there's a moment in Bull Durham, I think, the movie, and again, probably dating myself here, but there's a moment where Kevin Costner's trying to teach, what's his name? I forget the actor. It's just like, this is what you say. Nuke Lelouch was his character name.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you say after, I just did what any other player would have done. And it's team effort, and it's the same rote memory stuff. But at the end of the day, cops like to know that people are like, yeah, you're actually out there doing some good things. It doesn't have to be a medal or a letter. It can be just a, man, I noticed, and way to go. That's awesome.
Good job.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, I was just going to say, they're going to say, look at you and go, I'm going to shout out my lieutenant. She's been with me forever. And she is, I call her a pit bull, because if you can give her any case, she will work that thing until the wheels fall off of it. And usually, it'll end with an arrest. It might take a little while, but as she'll track somebody down, and it might do whatever. And I said, she goes, that's my job. I'm like, but you're good at your job.
Yeah.
Even if they tell you, thank you, that's my job. You don't have to say it. You know what? You should be saying that.
Totally.
Because when they're doing that kind of work, because trust me, because when the person calls up and makes a BS complaint against that person, and it's BS, but you need to tell them, hey, I got to look into this because this person made this complaint. They're devastated.
Yep.
Because good cops are devastated if somebody makes a complaint on them. So don't just tell them when somebody makes a complaint on them, or they tell them when they knock it out of the park.
Right. That makes just as much difference. And then likewise, and it happened a lot during George Floyd. If you're the chief, stand there and take the heat.
Yeah.
This is my responsibility. And I was in the middle of the protests, and I wasn't just like, I'm going to sit in my office. You guys go handle this stuff. I mean, it's not fun, but guess what? That's part of what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, and you do those things because it's the right thing to do. But it's a great profession. I'm proud to have been a part of it and love supporting what we do.
But man, I'm glad we finally got this
thank you.
brother.
Sorry again for the technical issues the other day, but it's exciting to be here in Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah, and it's nice. You know what? Sometimes it's nice to see you in person.
Yeah,
we don't get to do that often. So
absolutely.
It's great to be able to do this in person. I want to thank you for your time, man. I thank you for all you're still doing.
Thanks
still doing for law enforcement. And as I said, I'm going to have Chris on in a couple of weeks.
Be great.
I'm going to delve myself a little more into the curve and kind of get a little more educated on what's going on.
He's the executive director. He's the man with the plans.
So when I get Chris, you better tell him he's going to be ready for some hard conversations.
I will do it.
Chris is pretty good. I don't know Chris very well, but I know of him, and I know some of the things that he's done. So I want to give you this time to maybe give an ending kind of statement, talk about Peregrine or the curve, whatever you want to do, just kind of end off and just kind of sign off with it.
I mean, I think the thing for me is that I think what we do in our careers, we have to make sure we take care of one another, and we have to make sure that we leave it better than we got it, and being able to find a way to give back to the profession in some form or fashion is always what it should be about. And I think making sure we take care of ourselves and take care of others in the process of doing it, because we need to support the folks that are out there that are doing the job that's increasingly difficult, in an increasingly difficult social media time and political time and all the different things. As life just becomes more challenging, here they are out there every single day doing what they do, and it doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated. So just a big thank you to all the folks that are out there, and make sure you tell the folks like us that can help support you what we need to do, and we got your back.
Definitely. Well, Doug, thanks again, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
I
Yeah,
hope you take care of yourself, and we'll see you somewhere soon.
likewise. Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys for listening to Deep Blue Project today. Hey, do me a favor. I'm going to add a little something today. As anybody knows, there's a little known organization called the National Law Enforcement Officers Hall of Fame. They've been out there for 7 years, and they recognize these officers just as what we're talking about. Go look them up. Put your officers in for a possible award for the Hall of Fame. They didn't have to solve the Jimmy Hoffa murders. They just have to be good people and do what they do. And the National Law Enforcement Hall of Fame is trying to do that. So please go check it out. Please nominate your people if you feel they're deserving. And I'm sure they are. But let's get that out there, because these individuals, Megan and Adam, have put together this organization to honor our officers. And just as we just talked about, we don't do enough of that.
For sure.
So thank you very much, guys. Take care. As always, stay safe, and we will see you the next time on the Deep Blue Project.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com, and to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.